I want to display my name is this tire here. Here, my name is this here. How do I go about it? You can help us. Based on what I explained in the last class. David, I didn't ask.
So we make use of the use selector.
Okay.
So firstly, we import use. Okay, yeah, we import use selector.
Okay. Imported.
Then is a function.
Okay.
Then we can you go back to where the name is?
Okay, here is it.
Okay. So the where the store is, the store.
Okay.
Okay, so you used that the person we want to display is on person slide. So
Yes.
on person. So let's go back now.
I don't think we don't have to check. Let me remove it. Okay.
So now inside our use selector,
Okay.
we'll do state.
Okay.
State. Then a callback is it a callback function or
Okay.
the equals and yes.
We return. You are
Then
using it to
equals,
return it. Right?
yeah, we return. Yeah,
Okay.
return is the word. Yeah. Then we can also say state.
Okay.
So it will now be dot person.
Okay.
Then we can now destructure the name that we need from this.
Okay.
So const name. Okay, let name equals this.
Exactly. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
Good. So tonight, let's talk about Usedispatch. Thanks for this. So Usedispatch is used to edit. Let's say if you want to change, when you want to do anything here, you want to change anything in your store. Let's say I want to change its name to another thing. Right. You can't change anything in your store without the function of reducers. Reducers are the ones, reducers are like gatekeepers of your store. So if I want to change anything in my store, I make use of reducers, and that is what this property reducer is. These are some of those things we've used in the past, but let's create this again from afresh. So you create a property called reducers, and this is an object. Inside this object, you can now put other reducers there. I mean the name of your reducers. So I can say rename. So whenever I call on this reducer, it takes a property called states. So these states represent your old states. I come again. These states, it represents your old states. So I can say states that if I want to rename this tire now to another thing, that becomes state.name equals to David. So whenever I call on this reducer, rename, whenever I call on it, it will change the value. This state, like I said, this state stands for these old states here. So I'm targeting name, state.name, I'm changing it to David. And if I'm able to find a way to call on this rename, the name will change from Taye to David. And the good thing is that it's going to change out all places where that value is used. That is, whenever I use this selector to get anything from my store, whenever I use it to get the name, the value of the name will be changed at all of those points at the same time. Any questions so far?
Sorry, sir, I didn't get you.
Okay. Now here is it. Commission wants to join. Whenever you want to change anything in your store, you know.
Sir, are you recording this class? Because it's like you forgot.
Yes, the class is being recorded.
Okay, sir.
Thank you. Whenever you want to change any value in your store, we make use of reducers. That is what the reducer is doing for you. Reducers. This reducers is an object. Inside this object, you put functions there. Do you get to that point?
Yes, sir.
Okay. If I need to change any value in my store now, sorry, someone wants to join the class. If I need to change any value in my store, then I will create a function here to change that value. So let's say I want to change the department to something else. I can just create a function here called change department. It's a function like this. Do you get it to this point? Hello?
Okay, I'm following. Yes, I'm following.
So if I'm able to find a way to call on this function, change department, I want it to change the value of this department. But you see these functions in your reducer, you know all of them are inside these reducers, right? Like you can have some other function, maybe you can have another one. If I want to change the name, I can have another one called change name like this. So now there are two functions in my reducer. This, I want to use this to change the department. I want to use it to change the name. Each of these functions now expects its first argument to be state. It's not supposed to call it state, right? You can call it anything. But whatever it is, it stands for your state. It stands for this state, whatever this is. Do you get it? Hello, are you with me?
Yes, sir, we are following. Yes, sir, following.
No, this is an object, right? That means this A will be this object now. This A stands for whatever your state is at any point in time. So initially, our state starts as this object. So whatever you put here also stands for this object. So that's why we usually call it state. And I will also advise you that you stick to the name state. This state stands for this whole object or whatever your state is at any point in time. We can now say state. We know this, you are calling on this variable now, all right? Remember, this variable stands for this object. I can now say state dot, inside this object, there's a property there called department, DEPT, right?
Sorry, sir, I can't see your screen. I don't know whether it's the network.
Okay, let me stop sharing. I will share again.
Okay. It's probably his network. I can see.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, can we move on?
Okay, right on, sir.
Okay. Now, because there is a property here called department, that's why we can say DEPT, state.DEPT. We can now change it to another thing. Do you get it? Any questions so far? If you understand, you say I understand.
I understand, sir.
Okay. Kisley, are you calling? Is that?
Can you please come again, sir?
So whenever we use selector to select a value from our store. Whenever it's time to change anything in your store, you see these values in the store, they can't be changed except with these reducers. Only reducers can change the things in your store. These are like, without reducers, these are like constants. See it like that. Do you understand? These things are like constant that cannot change, right? So, but of course, you will need to maybe at a lot of points you want to change the things in your store. Maybe remember, redux is used for state-wide values. I mean, values that you need, application-wide states, state that you need in different pages of your applications. So you may want to change it at a point in time, right? So, but without reducers, these are just like constants that cannot change. But whenever you want to change anything in your store, you need to add a property called reducers. Do you get to this point?
Yes, sir.
Now, this property expects functions inside them. That is, it expects to create some functions there. This function, whatever it can be one, it can be two, it can be as much as you want it to do. Right? The functions that you're going to create in your reducers will be the one to change the value in your store. So I can say if I want to change, let's say I want to add new value to these languages, I can say add language. So meaning I'm creating a function inside it called add language. Right. This is a parameterized function. All the things that will be in your reducers, all the functions that will be there, they will be parameterized functions. So the first argument of the function is supposed to be states, or whatever it is, you can call it any name, but the convention is to call it states. Whatever you name it stands for this. So this and this now, at the moment, they stand for the same thing. Do you get it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I can now say states that there is something here called languages, right? There's a property here called languages. So languages equals to, I can now add new languages. I can now add a new language. Let's say I'm adding Solidity to it. So spread whatever might be there initially. So this will put the JS and Python here. Then it will now add Solidity back to it. So now we now have three languages here. So instead of languages will be this here. Any questions so far?
Yes, I have a question.
Okay.
Anything, sir?
Okay, I can hear you.
Any changes I made inside the reducer, does it affect the initial state?
Yes, exactly, it will.
Okay.
So when you call on this, it will add a new language called Solidity. Now, if I want to add, maybe I want to rename this. Rename. I'll just add a function called rename, and I can put states here. States dot name, because there's a property here called name already, so I can call it Tolu, like this. So I'm changing this name from Taye to Tolu. That's the concept of reducers. Next is this. Okay.
Yes, I have a question, sir.
You can ask it.
Now, you are making use of this reducer inside the app.js.
Yes.
Can it be used under a component? You said if we are working on a large project and we need to use this initial state, this particular values under another component, can we make use of reducer in that place also?
Yes, in fact, that is what this is meant for. You see, we exported something out here. Where is it? Okay. So we imported use selector here. This use selector, this is a component. Landing page, this is a component here. So within this component now, we are making use of the name that we have here. Do you get it? So in any of the beauty of this is that in any component of your choice, any component whatsoever, bring in use selector, then you can extract whatever you need in your store in any component. Maybe in the next slide we still separate things to different files to make things neater, but I think having everything inside this app.js makes it easier to explain. Once you get this now, we can now later split things into files and you now see how we bring them together. But at the moment, we have all of them here. If you need it inside any component whatsoever, once the component is wrapped with this provider, once it's within this provider, then you have access to that value.
All right, sir.
All right. Okay.
Thanks, sir.
You're welcome. Now let's talk about this. We have our reducers here. Within our reducers, we have two functions now. So whenever you want to change anything in your store, you make use of these functions. So the next problem with us is that we want to find a situation or a way whereby when you click on this button, let's say change name. This is our component. Let's go to the browser. When I click on this button, change name, we want to call on this rename. Do we get the problem now? Because we know that once we call on this rename, then the value of this name will change to Tolu, and all components making use of that value will reflect the changes. Right? So what happens once with this redux toolkit, once you create a reducer like this, and you had a property in your, or a function like this in your reducer, what toolkit does for you is that it's going to create something called actions that also bears that same name. I come again. Immediately you create your reducer, and you create any function in your reducer, with redux toolkit now, it will automatically create something called action, which is another function that bears that same name. The reason is because it is the action that calls on the reducer. We want to call on this, but we don't call on this directly. We know once we run this, it will add new language. Once we run this, it will rename this to Tolu, right? Now, in order to call on this, there is something called actions. The action is like a clone of all the functions here. Do we understand it? Hello?
Continue, sir.
Are we lost?
No, sir.
Okay. So this is the order. The component calls on action. Oops. Action calls on reducer. Then reducer changes the value in the store. So we've seen how reducer now can be used to change value. We know once I call on this now, the value in the name will change to Tolu. So we've looked at this, the reducer changes the value in the store. But before I can call on this reducer, action will be the one to call on the reducer, right? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Look at the order. The component calls on action calls on reducer changes the value in the store. We've seen this, how reducer can change the value in the store, right? But this is the component now, this button. We need to find a way for it to call on action so that the action can call on reducer, and the reducer will be the one to change the value in our store. This is what we want to do. We looked at this third one, how the reducer can change the value in the store. But next is, how will action call on reducer? The good news is that Redux Toolkit has automated that calling. Once you create a reducer, instantly it will create an action also that looks like that. Now, because we have these two reducers here, that means we automatically have two actions also. We don't need to create it manually. In old Redux, you need to create the action manually. But now, you don't need to create it manually. Once you create a reducer, it will automatically create actions also that bear the same name. So that means we now have two actions on ground. One is add language and the other is rename. Do we get it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And the rename action will be the one to call on this. The add language action will be the one to call on this. So we don't need to create it manually. Next is, how do we have access to these created actions? Remember I said Redux Toolkit has created the action for you using the name of your reducer. But how will our component have access to these actions? And that's what we are doing here. Let's comment this out so it won't constill bug to your code. That's what we are doing here. We are saying, look at the name of your slice. The name of this slice is person slice, right? It has a property on it called actions. Just the same way, it has a property on it called reducer. Can you see this? Dot reducer, right? It also has a property on it called action. What I will do is I will just say console log person slice dot actions, and these actions will be those ones that were created by our Redux toolkit for us. This is the object. Let's check what we have inside this object. Can you see add language and rename? We have two properties now. So these actions, they were created using the name of your reducer so that you don't need to create it manually. If you are getting it, say I'm getting it.
I'm getting it.
Okay. If you are lost, say I'm lost.
I'm getting it.
Okay. Okay. Let's move on. Kisley. It's not there. Let's move on.
Yes, sir, I can hear you.
Are you getting it?
Yes.
All right. So these actions now we automatically bear the name of your reducers. Now next is we can see inside your actions now we have two functions there. Add language and rename. So all I need to do is to find a way to call on this rename action in my component. And once I call on this rename action, it will automatically call on this rename reducer, and that will change the value of the name. Do we see that our problem is almost solved? Find a way to call on the rename action that you see here. The rename action will call on the rename reducer, and the reducer will change the value in your store. That's all. So in order to get that done, we export this action. Let's say I'm only interested in the rename. Let's say I'm only interested there. So I can say export. So what I'm doing there is I'm destructuring the name. You know, I can say, okay, let's do it this way so that it will be easier to understand. So person slice.action, this is what we log to the console, that object. Oh, I think I've removed the console. Person slice.actions. When we checked it in the console the other time, we observed that it has property on it called rename, right? Isn't it?
Yes, sir.
So we are saving that as this rename, and we are exporting it out so that we can use it in our components now. Any question?
No questions, sir.
All right. So how do we now have access to this variable or this constant in our component?
Yeah,
that's the next thing now. So let's import it. I think I have a import here, the name. So this has imported it for us. So in order to, we call it, whenever you want to call an action, we call it dispatch. You are dispatching an action. In order to dispatch an action, you bring in something called Usedispatch. Usedispatch is present inside React Redux. Usedispatch. Let's bring it in. It's also a function, right? Usedispatch. So Usedispatch is a function from React Redux that are used to dispatch an action, or in other words, call on an action. It's a function. When you call on this function like this, it's going to return an object called this. We save the object to dispatch. Okay. In fact, sorry. Sorry. Let's just use this. Let's do it this way. When you call on this, right, this returns an object, and you are saving that object as var. But the convention is, of course, we call it dispatch, but it's not a must to call it dispatch. You can call it any name of your choice. Whatever you call on, whenever you call on this, it returns this, and you save it as this here. Any question? Okay. You can now say on click, let's get a function, change name. So let's get function. So to dispatch an action, you make use of this var now. Var, you now put this name there. The name. Remember, this is a function, right? So guys, instantly you are calling on it will trigger or it will dispatch the action called rename. Action called rename will call on the reducer called rename, and the reducer called rename will change the value of name. Hope you understand. I come again. You bring in something called Usedispatch. You call on it, you trigger it, you save it in a variable. Whenever you want to call on action, that variable is what you use. So we named it var, right? Then you put your action inside it. You trigger the action. Being a function, you trigger the action like this. So this is when I click on this button, if you don't know the codes here, it will call on this var. This var helps us to dispatch an action. So it will dispatch this name, and the name will trigger the reducer. The name will trigger the reducer called rename, and it will change the value of name to Tolu. Any question? Now let's go to the browser and see how it looks like now. You can see this has changed to Tolu. Now, we don't usually call it, you call this dispatch. I use var so that you can see that you can call it any name of your choice, right? But then it's good to use the common term, dispatch. So you dispatch an action called rename. Now, task force. So let's say I want to dispatch this. At the moment, I have I just say languages. So my first language. Let's display all the languages. Languages like this. I think everything should be on the screen now. JS, Python. Let's break this to the next line. JS, Python. Let's break this too. I just want us to focus on this part. So presently we see JS and Python on the screen, right? Let's add a button. Add solidity. When you click on this button, I want to call on this reducer. I want to do this. How do I go about it? Tell me what to do. Hello?
Come again, sir.
What I want to do is, when I click on this button, I want to add a new language, this solidity. I want to add it. How do I go about it?
So make use of our use dispatch.
Okay. Tell me what to write. Use dispatch.
Use dispatches.
Okay.
Then we trigger the function.
Okay.
We need to export the I find it. You will export the name of the action
Okay.
first from the app.js.
Okay.
So it will be add.
Can the structure from there.
Okay, I have it at the structure.
Okay.
Is it a language or add languages? What do you call it? Add language.
Add language.
Okay.
Add
Okay.
language. Then you will import it in the landing page.
Okay. Okay.
Then our use dispatch would assign it to a variable called dispatch.
Okay. Okay.
Then we can now create a function on that button that we want to add the language.
Okay.
Then inside our inside the function we call on the dispatch.
Okay.
Dispatch.
Okay.
There's a function we call. Then we now call on
the
language.
add language. The add language function.
No, it's not add language. Okay.
Like this. So if someone wants to join, please.
No, it's not.
Sorry, you said what?
It's not add new language we call on. Okay, add language. Yes. Yes.
Okay. Exactly. Good.
Yes.
So he got it right. You can see. If I click on it, it will add another one. So it's working fine. Right. Any questions so far?
No question.
Okay, good. But then, if you want to add a new language, you want it to be dynamic, right? If you don't want it to just be solidity every time. You want the user to type the language he or she wants, then you add it. And even for the name, you don't want the name to always change to Tolu alone. Maybe you want it to change to something else. You want it to be a dynamic value, not a constant. That brings us to the next thing. So this, remember I said the first argument of your reducer here, the first argument of each of the functions in the reducer is state, right?
Yes, sir.
The second argument is action. Action. So when you dispatch an action like this, you can pass a value here. Whatever value you put here, whatever, like I said, whatsoever it is, becomes the value of this action. So I'll come here and put, which language should we put? Let's say PHP. So this PHP becomes the value of our action. So instead of putting solidity here, I'll just put action here. Do you get it? Are you with me?
Yes, sir.
All right. So we had two buttons. Let's get two buttons. The first, just for now, let's use two different functions. This can be add solidity. This can be add PHP. Right. Let's remove this name for now. I'll just focus on this. So when you click on this, like this. When you click on this first one, it will call on function add PHP, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
This will dispatch this add language and it will pass PHP as the value of action, and it will add PHP as part of the languages. When you click on this other one, if you call on this will dispatch add language. This solidity will be sent to this place, and it will add solidity.
Languages.
Any questions so far? Oh, I didn't change the text.
No questions.
I didn't change the text. Okay. Oh, if you want to render, use an array instead. Okay, let's see what you are doing wrongly. Okay. Okay. Let's turn back an error. Let's say languages. I don't want to go through this before. Initially, I wanted us to just focus on use dispatch parts. Okay. And let's just say H2. Okay. So I think the error should be now. Oh, what am I doing wrongly? Wait. Oh. I'm sorry. I didn't read the error message. I didn't take my time to read the error message. Sorry. We can even still leave this out. Now, this is what is going on. When you dispatch something like this, remember I said whatever you put here becomes the value of your action, right?
Mm-hmm.
But no, that's not it. This action has a property on it called payload. Come again. This action is an object. It has a property on it called payload, that is action.payload. So whatever you put here, whatever you dispatch here becomes the value of this action.payload. Do we get it? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Alright. Whatever you put here becomes the value of action.payload. This action is an object. It has a property. That's the reason it was throwing back an error, because action is an object and you can't display a whole object directly on your screen in React.js. Right? So you can't render a whole object. This action has a property on it called payload. So whatever you put here becomes the value of your payload. So instead of saying action now, this becomes what? Do we get it?
Yes, sir.
Alright. So our application will work fine now. Solidity, PHP, solidity, PHP. Any question?
No question.
Alright, thank you. Now, you don't just want to limit it to just solidity and PHP, right? You want your users to be able to type other things aside solidity and PHP. Maybe the person may be interested in other languages, maybe Java, maybe C, any other language whatsoever. Right. So what you're going to do is this. We add an input here. We get the states to handle whatever is inside our input. Const maybe new language. Oops. Puts an array like this. Command change language. Change name language equals to use states So new language, change new language equals to usestate. Then as the user type on key, we can use an input. Sorry, event, change new language, event.target. We've done all of this in the past, right? Are you with me?
Yes, sir.
Alright. So whatever you type here becomes the value of this variable, right? This new language, right?
Yes, sir.
Alright. So instead of creating two separate functions now, we can just get a single function to dispatch the action. Const set new language. So let's say add a new language. We now call on the function set new language.
New language.
So whenever we call on this, whenever we click on this button, we will dispatch this action, add language. Then we will now send this value of new language to the what's it called, as part of our payload. Okay, class ends in 15 minutes time. Dispatch. We are dispatching add language, right? So what are we now? We now had this as our payload, new language. Remember, this new language stands for whatever is inside this input, right?
Yes.
So it stands for whatever is inside this input. All we are just doing is we are looking for a way to dispatch whatever is within that input. So when you click on this button, instantly it will dispatch it. It will dispatch the action, then it will now send it as a payload. So this new language now becomes the value of action dot payload there. So let's go to the browser and see how it looks like. Refresh. I can add a new language. Which language should we add? So Java. Let's say so. Any question?
No question.
Okay. So this is how to dispatch an action. I hope we've done enough justice to this.
Yes, sir.
So in our next class, I will ask us again. Then we now look at how to make asynchronous call in Redux. Maybe there will be some time that you want to make asynchronous call. How do you go about it in Redux? So we check out that in our next class. Thanks for coming. Have a lovely class.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.